What
Unreal.
was it like to have Marcus Smart back, my friend? And how do the players view him on the Celtics?
Yeah, like look, I think he had some very close relationships, especially there with Jalen. They butted heads a lot early, and then kind of figured it out in terms of respecting what each other did. And I think, like, look, there's probably I know for sure there's part of Marcus that it was tough watching from afar to see that same core elevate and win a title. I'm sure there's Jason Tatum has said it that he always thought Marcus would be a teammate. But the league changes, and it's like pretty undeniable. The Celtics, look, part of those moves was trading my favorite guy, Robert Williams, and I can't argue that it didn't work out. So um, I understand it, and I think it was weird because it's been, I think, 530 days since they traded Marcus, and it took forever to get him back on the court. And unfortunately, had a pretty rough shooting night, and the Celtics had an even worse shooting night.
Just say,
So
Marcus hasn't changed a bit.
yeah,
11 shots in 19 minutes. He was 1 of 11. That sounds right.
Someone said the Celtics shot whatever 30% from 3-point land as like a tribute to Marcus Smart. And I
Yeah.
thought that was a little harsh, but look, I think Marcus is in a good situation. I think that team is going to be in the mix in the West after a pretty rough year last year. Marcus sounds like he's in a good place. Family wise, just had he brought his son here and everything. So it is different. It was just weird seeing him in a different uniform, and I know that happens all the time in the NBA, but it just I don't know, especially from my perspective as someone who covers this team forever. It just again Marcus, it was hard to remember a season that Marcus wasn't here. So there's always some emotion that goes into it. I wish he had played better on his trip home here.
One X's and O's thing about that game, though, Chris, they chose to leave Drew Holiday wide open for most of the game, and he did not deliver. He's one of the better corner three-point shooters in the league, I believe, and he missed just about everything he threw up there. Is that something other teams are going to try carrying forward here?
Yeah, but I mean, we've seen teams do this. The Warriors letting Jalen shoot, and that blew up on him pretty quick. I think, look, Drew's not shooting the ball well. The number that jumps out, 60% in the corners last year, best in the league, down to 30% right now. I don't know, like 20 games, 24 games here is a pretty good sample. It's fair to say he hasn't shot the ball well. I think he'll shoot it better. It's weird that the night before against Milwaukee was probably his best offensive game of the year, and certainly he had some motivation there. But I'm not something I'm like super worried about yet. But certainly it's a copycat league, and teams are going to pick somebody on your team. I do wonder, Al didn't play that game. That's one of your better corner guys. Sam had to leave it with the injury. Like if you had more options in that spot, maybe they couldn't have dared you quite as much as they did. But give them credit, like teams got to figure out how to roll the dice against the Celtics, and there might be nights where they do that and it totally blows up on them. But in this game, it worked, and I suspect that other teams will try to pick someone and put the pressure on them.
Maybe I'm thinking about this way too simply, but Felger and Maz were talking about this the other day, and I know the Callahan and Felger got into it a little bit on TV the other night. But when it comes to the insistency on the 3-point shooting for the Celtics, and they're taking more threes than anyone else, and they won the championship doing it, and you understand why they're doing it. But I wonder, Chris, and is this already part of the program, or is there some plan to maybe ever do this on the nights when they're not going down, because it seems to be contagious. Nights when guys aren't hitting, it's not just Drew Holiday, it can be multiple guys. Is there any plan to say, okay, now we're going to rope-a-dope this thing, we're going to make them think we're going to continue to shoot the three, but instead we're going to work the ball inside, and we're going to start playing more in the paint, and we're going to start taking some of those mid-range jumpers, because that seems like the obvious solution when you're not hitting from beyond the arc. Will they do that? Have they done it? Is it something that would be under consideration, or do they just continue to shoot threes no matter what?
So two things. One, last year, whenever they didn't shoot the ball well, they were terrible. I think the number was 8 and 12 anytime they were under 33.3%.
Right.
And they didn't always have ways to win games when that shot wasn't falling. So, it was like, for me, it was, would they evolve a little bit this year? Now, before that Memphis game, they were 6-0 when they shot below 33.3%. And I don't think they've done a great job tapping into when those shots aren't falling, knowing like how to get out of it and getting back to maybe a little bit more post ups. Like I think in general, and I'd have to go check this, but I bet the post up numbers are way down. One, because Porzingis wasn't out there for most of the season, but like I don't just anecdotally, I don't feel like Tatum's posted up as much as he did at the start of last year. Maybe Jalen a little bit. But yeah, like whether it's posting up or just being more aggressive driving the ball, which there are nights where they do it and it's like, man, they can't stop you. Just be relentless going to the rim. And I'd love to see that more when the shot isn't falling. And yet, like, as much as I think everyone bristled that, like, I think the number is 58% of their shots this year are threes, and it's 8% more than the next closest team, which I believe is Charlotte. And it is jarring, but this is how the roster was constructed, and it's proven to be successful.
Yeah.
And until you're not winning championships with it, like there's no reason to get away from it. And I think they've, even more so this year, they've leaned into it, and I don't mind it. They just got to have that balance, as you said. They have to be cognizant on the night where it feels contagious, where just no one can get one to drop, where teams are scheming you so that, it's all on one guy like Drew. They've got to be better at audibling in that moment or at least just, finding a different way to attack it. And maybe the Grizzlies game had so many different, the end of the 5 and 7, there were a lot of different storylines of why they didn't quite have it that night. But yeah, like I think in general, it is good for them to have different options to beat you. And I think especially with Porzingis back out there, they'll be more apt to lean into that.
Chris, you're there every day, and I'm not, so maybe I'm reading this wrong, but it seems like Joe Mazzulla is less tolerant of the beginning of the press conference softball questions than he used to be.
Well, it's funny. I'm watching from afar a lot now when I'm in the studio. I think. Was there a specific one you didn't like?
No,
or you think
like the uniforms, like the new neon uniforms. He just has no tolerance whatsoever for non-basketball, X's and O's talk.
Yeah, but I think we've learned that over the last 2 years. Like that's just that going in that he's not going to want to play ball on those. And sometimes they spawn the best answers. That one that Abby asked about the jersey, like where he says, what do you like best? And he says that it says Celtics on it. It's like fairly hilarious. And but yeah, you're right. Like he doesn't, especially after losses or, if it's another question about the threes, he doesn't want to engage. And I get it. He's like, he doesn't feel like he needs to address that it has sort of been addressed a lot. And, you just kind of understand that going in and take your chances if you want to go down that path.
All right. Well, listen, he does not suffer fools. And if I wanted to personally know his take on the uniform and what he thought of it, if he thought it was neat, I mean, that's why they have press conferences.
And my thing is always that, these coaches are paid pretty handsomely to answer 10 minutes of questions. And it is a lot. Maybe I've said this on your show before. Brett Brown once tracked the totality of how much media he had to do over the course of a year. And he was telling Brad Stevens the number. And I remember Brad saying, like, don't even tell me because you just don't want to know. It's like how much you sit in traffic. You're like, just don't even tell me how many hours and days of my life were wasted answering questions about, side pick and rolls and whatever other nonsense that they've got to explain. And so, but the flip side is you make a lot of money. It's people want to hear some of this stuff, and so I appreciate when people are tolerant of our questions.
Yeah, I actively tune into press conferences after every game. I mean, that's what my favorite thing is. I gotta know. I need to know.
Fred, my post-game show, we need the ratings. Please don't deter people from listening to
I go there because I want to see
and
one thing, and that's the analyzing things by the guy in the warm-up vest, because he's got walking to do. And listen, that's why Forsberg's got the warm-up vest, and that's why he's the best on NBC Sports Boston. Chris Forsberg, thank you so much for the time, sir. We appreciate it.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. For more Celtics analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.